Welcome to High Flyer English Chill Out with me, Steve Ellis. Why chill out? Well, I want to help you improve your English fluency in a relaxed, non-pressurized way. Call it laid back, if you like. That's not to say that the content isn't valuable or rewarding, but I don't want it to feel intense in a way that's off-putting. You learn best when the content is enjoyable. So chill, listen, and take it at a pace that suits you. The main focus will be on helping you learn vocabulary, not just individual words, but lexis. Words which go together in blocks, in chunks. We actually call them lexical chunks. I'll say more about them in a minute. But first, have a listen to this and see how much you understand. If you're watching on YouTube, you have the advantage of having captions to follow so you can read. But you might want to turn your head away and just use it as a listening exercise at first and then play it and look at the captions. If you're listening on audio, you haven't got the captions. So it's just listening. Okay, here you go. I see Jack Grimshaw showing off, driving around in a brand new Mercedes and boasting about his new job. If this had been a few years ago, I'd have thought he'd nicked it. It looks like that spell inside has done him some good. Turned over a new leaf and all that.
You've got to give credit to him. He's done well for himself considering his background. Sorry, what were you saying? I was miles away. Sarah's done what?
Had a big argument with her boss at work and told him what she thought of him in no uncertain terms. Looked like a job might be on the line. She's on a warning now, but I think it's touch and go whether they'll keep her on. Why can't she ever keep her mouth shut and not let fly? She takes after you in that respect. You've always been one to speak your mind.
I beg your pardon?
Understand it all? Yeah? Well, if you did, you must already be at C2 proficiency level. Maybe you should switch this off, go onto Netflix, find a good film to watch. I'm kidding. Okay. If you really did understand everything, then you are doing pretty well, because it's not easy. But I'm guessing that many of you may have struggled with it, even if you followed the captions. There's some odd vocabulary in there, isn't there? Well, that's the kind of stuff which you can expect here. As I said, the main focus will be on vocabulary, not just individual words, on lexical blocks, lexical chunks, words which go together. Collocations, phrasal verbs, hated phrasal verbs, idioms, and other idiomatic language. And something else as well, something which I'm going to call fixed expressions. By fixed expressions, I don't mean idioms, because of course idioms are fixed expressions. No, the fixed expressions, they're groups of words and other assembly, blocks of words which we frequently use, but they're not actually idioms. More about that as we come to it. I'll say more about me later, but for now, let me say I'm British, I live in England, I'm a native English speaker, I've lived here all my life, well, apart from when I've been abroad teaching English, which is quite a lot actually. I live in Oxfordshire and I'm a teacher and teacher trainer. I've got a fairly neutral accent. Something else I'll add, which may sound a bit funny, but I think it's relevant. I'm knocking on a bit. I'm no spring chicken. I'm taking you in at the deep end here. In at the deep end means going into something, into deep water without being able to swim. It's an idiom. What I mean by taking you into the deep end is that I'm using idioms which you probably don't know. Knocking on a bit means I'm not in my youth. I'm getting older. As does I'm no spring chicken. Okay, so I'm joking about my age. But why is it relevant? Well, it means that I've had a long life, and in that long life, well, since I was 2 years old, I've been speaking English, and English is my passion. English language and English literature too. I love it. I live for it. I'm immersed in it. I've got a bee in my bonnet about it. A bee in my bonnet. If you've got a bee in your bonnet, another idiom. Oh, you're obsessed. You're trying to get rid of it. Bonnet is a hat. I've got a bee in my bonnet about English, about finding more about it, and also about teaching it, because I think some methods, some ways are better than others. So, yeah, I love my language. I love English. Thank you, Willie Shakespeare. You helped. Mentioning Shakespeare, there are so many phrases and expressions which are still in use, which were coined by Shakespeare. Be coined means that they were invented by Shakespeare. Incredible, really. Well, I've used several idiomatic expressions already, and I've done it purposely. I've done it on purpose because I don't want to talk down to you. To talk down means that I'm putting myself above you and talking in a rather condescending, simplified manner to you. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to simplify the way that I talk. I'm going to talk in my natural way. Now, there may be bits which you don't understand, but I'll make available a transcript, a script of what I've said. A script is what you read from. A transcript is what you produce after you've actually said the words. So you can have a look through, and I'll highlight the words and the phrases which you may find difficulty with. So my speaking to you is part of the lesson. My speaking to you in this way and using these odd phrases and idioms at times is all part of learning. So what's my aim in these podcasts, and why should they be of interest to you? Well, my aim is to help you as advanced learners achieve English C1 and go through to C2, and to help you to become fluent in English. What do I mean by an advanced learner? What can you do at a C1 level? Well, it basically means that you have full autonomy when you go to an English-speaking country. By having full autonomy, it means that you are well capable of dealing with everyday situations, even though they may be slightly complicated. You've got sufficient language to make yourself understood, to be understood, and to understand others. Yeah, sure, there may be things which you don't know, but you are going to more than get by. You're going to cope very, very adequately. So that's the C1 level. And if you want to find more about what it means in detail, it's best to look at the CEFR, the Council of Europe Framework of Reference for the C1 level, to see the list there. I'm not going to read it out here because it's a bit heavy, but that will give you a full rundown on what you can do at C1 level. A rundown, if you give someone a rundown, it means you give them the details, you give them an explanation to give a rundown of it. You can find the CEFR levels on the Cambridge website. You can find it on my own website. Okay, so have a look. There are also some good charts which show you what it actually means. It's worth mentioning, although it will differ from student to student, you can expect to achieve C1 level after 800 hours of cumulative experience, of cumulative instruction. That's a lot, isn't it? But don't panic. I'm assuming that you've done a lot of it already. Even at B2 level, you have probably been doing a lot of C1 stuff. I came across a very interesting piece written by Scott Thornbury, a New Zealander who's very well known in the world of English language teaching. He's written several books. He has one called The A to Z of ELT, English language teaching, which is a dictionary of terms and concepts used in English teaching. What he says is this: the proficiency of advanced learners may be due to prolonged instruction or prolonged exposures, or more likely, a combination of two. This means that no two advanced learners will be the same. It could be that some are good communicatively. They're able to express themselves. They feel confident in talking to native English speakers or other speakers of English. They can get their ideas across. They can understand everything. They may need some fine tuning when it comes to grammar. They may not be completely accurate. On the other side, you can have those learners who are spot on with the grammar, but they're not relaxed about speaking, about having a conversation. They have to put the words together very carefully to make sure that they're accurate. There's quite a difference between the two. Often, an advanced learner is going to be a bit of a combination of the two. But it does pose a dilemma, a problem for a teacher such as me, what to actually teach, because advanced learners differ. You've worked at different paces. You've concentrated on different things. I know this from getting responses and asking for feedback from the learners on my Facebook groups. The needs differ. It sparks quite some debate sometimes, which is natural. It's inevitable. But it does give me a problem sometimes, or any teacher, of knowing just what to concentrate on, because there's so much, isn't there? But there's one thing that advanced learners do have in common, and that's that they're successful learners. If you're an advanced learner, you're a successful learner. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't be where you are today. You wouldn't have done years of study and achieved what you have so far. So being a successful learner, you know pretty well what you need to do, at least have a pretty good idea of what you need to do to improve your English, because you'll know where your weak spots are. You may need some guidance from teachers such as me, but you'll have your own idea as well. So in other words, you're able to decide for yourself to some extent what your learning objectives are. And the reason that's important is that, as regard to my podcast, you can pick and choose which episodes are relevant, are going to be of benefit for you. Okay? Now, here's something you need to consider. If you're going to take the Cambridge Advanced Exam, CAE, then grammar is important, yes, but grammar isn't tested. There's no individual grammar test. The main focus is on lexis, and you need to increase that vocabulary by an enormous amount from what you knew at B2 upper intermediate. But back to vocabulary, it's not just individual words, it's these stocks of phrases. You're going to need the vocabulary in the reading and use of English part of the exam. You're going to need it in the listening part of the exam. You're going to have to employ it to actually use it in the speaking part. And you're going to need it when you come to the writing part. And of course, grammar will play its part in all of these. But once you've reached B2 level, you've done most of the grammar. You've learned all the tenses. Okay, there are other things to learn at C1 level, such things as inversions after negative adverbials and so on. But they're the icing on top of the cake. The focus in the exam is on lexis. Now, you may not be interested in taking the exam. You may just be interested in improving your fluency, and that's fine. My podcasts are not going to be about preparing you to take the exam. I will be mentioning that. If you want to be here just to actually listen to the chat and improve your spoken English, then that's fine. I have lots of students who've got no interest at all in taking the exam, but they do want to improve their English, their fluency, for whatever reasons. So back to this word which I keep using, lexis. Lexis means more than individual words. It means these words put together, the phrases, the expressions, the lexical chunks. And I do concentrate a lot on these because this is how these lexical chunks are how we learn to speak our language as a child. We might learn individual words, okay, and then start putting them together, listening to mummy and daddy or granny and granddad and other grown-ups, the big adults. We don't learn any grammar until we're at school, and it's usually much later at school. But we pick up these chunks of language. Now that becomes harder to do when you're an adult learner, but it can still help. It's called the lexical approach. But when I'm speaking, I'm not having to think about how I form my sentences, and much of what I come out with is already there. It's in these prefabricated chunks. And you can also use them as a learner of the English language when you're an adult. And that's what I'm going to try and get across to you. So let's listen to another video and the chunks of vocabulary, the lexis that you'll hear in the video. A native English speaker conversation.
Why does your mother have to keep having a go at me about being out of work? I mean, it's not as if I haven't tried, for heaven's sake. She seems to think I sit on my arse all day watching Netflix. I've lost count of the number of applications I've sent out. Then, to cap it all, she has the cheek to say I drink too much. As if. You knock down more wine than I do.
Stop getting your knickers in a twist. Don't take any notice of her.
Don't panic if you didn't catch the meaning of all the expressions. I wouldn't expect you to. That's why I'm here to help. To be fair, even proficiency learners, those at proficiency level, may find a bit of a problem with some of them. So what are we going to do in my podcast? We're going to take a look at the lexical approach to learning English. And what does it mean? It's a method of teaching described by a man called Michael Lewis back in the early 1990s. The basic principle of the lexical approach is that language is grammaticalized lexis rather than the other way around, rather than lexicalized grammar. In other words, lexis is central to creating meaning. Grammar plays a subservient managerial role. If you accept this principle, then you as learners should be spending more time developing a stock of phrases and less time on grammatical structures. Well, that's a pretty contentious point, isn't it? Contentious means argumentative. But let me emphasize here, that's in no way to diminish the importance of grammar. The lexical approach is not a substitute for grammar and accuracy. Rather, it's a supplement. So in future episodes, we'll delve more deeply into this, what lexical chunks are and how we use them. Let me emphasize that my podcasts are not sequential. I'm going to start off in the first few by establishing some kind of groundwork, but after that, dip in, scroll through, see what actually suits you, because I'll probably hop around a bit. things which may occur to me, which I will include, depending on my mood to some extent, or depending what I've read, something I've read which I think may be of interest to you. So you can expect to be watching a lot of videos of native English conversations, giving you listening practice and some reading practice as well, and analysing the vocabulary, analysing the lexis. As I said earlier, I'll send you out a transcript. The kind of thing that we're doing in the podcast is the kind of thing which I do in my Chatterbox Zoom workshops, which we've been doing for nearly a year now. A small group of learners and me, and we concentrate basically on speaking, okay, and using lexical chunks, using phrasal verbs, idioms, using collocations, using non-idiomatic expressions. We work on a theme, a particular topic. I may do some teaching or presenting, not teaching, but then the learners have ample opportunity to break out into groups or into pairs and to practice using these expressions themselves. They're great fun. I feel I recommend them. But the other good thing about it is that I get so much feedback from these sessions. I've learned so much. I hope that the students have learned so much. In fact, I know that they have. But I learn as well because I think, yeah, that worked really well. Doing that worked really well. And another session, we can have a discussion about it, feedback about it. Yeah, that wasn't so good. I'd rather do it in a different way. Now, I think teaching is a two-way thing. It's not a matter of me actually saying, this is what you need to learn. This is the way that you're going to learn it. You have your opinions about what works best for you. So it's like an exchange. It's a two-way thing of finding the best way forward. What I don't like doing is providing lists of idioms or phrasal verbs. They're all right as reference, but if you were in the kind of school I was in when I learned French, you had these long list of verbs or vocabulary you're trying to learn, cover one side of the page and look for them. They just don't work. You've got to use them, or at least you've got to see them used in context for them to sink in. Okay, to sink in. Okay, phrasal verbs. Otherwise, they go right over your head. Okay, idiom. Something goes over your head. You don't understand it. See, more lexical chunks. I'm using them all the time. I love using the Cambridge Advanced books about idioms, phrasal verbs, collocations, and vocabulary. There is a bit of a problem I find with them sometimes, though. It's not so much that they actually kind of provide a list as such, but they will provide conversations which contain a string of idioms or a string of phrasal verbs. And that's not really how an English conversation works. We don't speak in a string of idioms or phrasal verbs or collocations. It's a mix, may include a phrasal verb, an idiom, collocation, may not include an idiom at all. It just depends, okay? So you don't find idiom after idiom after idiom used. Don't get me wrong, though. That's another idiom. Don't misunderstand me. The books are very good. Okay. I mentioned my Chatterbox Zoom workshops. I'm hoping sometime in the near future that some of the learners may come and join me so that we can have a chat about the challenges that they've faced and maybe still face, and the challenges they've overcome, the obstacles they've overcome in learning English. You may be interested to hear what they have to say. And if you want to volunteer to come have a chat with me, then by all means, get in touch. Well, that's it for now. I can say, okay, that's your lot for now. meaning that's enough. I can't give you any more. It's not rude. It's just a funny way of saying, okay, that's your lot. I'm off now. I'm off means I'm going. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. So, to use an old English expression, or rather American, see you later, alligator. The response is, in a while, crocodile. See you later, alligator. In a while, crocodile. It comes from I think it's 1950s rock, when rock and roll first started. It was part of the song, I think. Okay, look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Stay happy. Bye for now.